couple of weeks after doing that, I did a different investigation, and like I said, this member of public said that they lived in a flat opposite of the road of where this building was, and they experienced the exact same thing, that they saw a little boy at the side of the bed. And I'd never even met this person, and they'd never knew anything about that experience. I'd never spoke to them about that, never told them anything, but they came out with the exact same experience I did, and they're only probably 100 to 200 meters away from the building we went into.
I see.
So whether there's a link, I don't know, but it did kind of make me think, was I actually now dreaming or not? So
yeah, I can understand. I mean, you know, when you have an experience, you think, is this real? You know, am I imagining this? Is this really something? I had a similar sort of a similar experience where I was investigating. I saw something underneath in a crypt area, this castle, and it's Oxford Castle. So when I was sort of investigating, had this figure walk in front of us. There's three of us there. And we all jumped backwards, so I knew it wasn't just me, because they saw it as well. But I was still like, you know, afterwards that happened, I was still like, was that, did I really see that? Did that really happen? But I had my camera on, but it didn't pick it up on the camera. Yeah. So that's very weird. That's the most biggest thing about it, is when you see something and you know your camera was pointing that way and your camera captures absolutely none of it. It's kind of like it kind of maybe proves the fact that they're on a different wavelength to what we are in terms of seeing, that our eyes can obviously see them, but our cameras aren't quite tuned into what our eyes can see. It's kind of it's when people talk about infrared, ultraviolet and things like that, I don't think it's so much infrared and ultraviolet, because we can see it with our own eyes, and our own eyes can't see infrared or ultraviolet. So it must be a wavelength that we can see, but for some reason our cameras just can't pick it up at the moment. I don't know. It's a very sort of skeptical way of looking at it, but it's just that it always seems a strange thing that we see it with our eyes, but not on the camera. Yeah, it does seem very, very strange indeed. You know, I mean, when you got different cameras, I mean, there has been things on thermal imaging as well. Yeah. Have you ever used sort of thermal imaging and things like that? We haven't. It's one piece of kit that I'd love to have in the team, because it's when I first started sort of investigating as a team, there were certain things I wanted to like piece of equipment that I wanted, and the first thing I ever wanted was a mel meter, because I wanted one because it was kind of designed for the job basically. Yeah. And the other thing was the Kinect camera. We got that. And I suppose the SLS camera, which is the Kinect, but kind of like a tuned in version. But the thermal cameras we would love, because it is kind of like a CCTV camera, but it can see what you can't see in the dark. So it's more better than sort of like your infrared or anything like that. But the biggest thing is with it, it's the cost. To any sort of investigator, even normal people who use it on a day-to-day basis, it's a lot of money to spend on a piece of equipment that probably does very little for what you use it for. We have thought about hiring one. Go on an investigation, we've hired it, and then we get to keep the footage at the end. So there is that possibility, but like I say, having your own equipment sometimes a little bit better. But again, as most paranormal investigators know, the biggest thing nowadays is cost. It's all self-funded. I mean, that's why we're doing events. It's purely to raise funds for the group itself, so we can afford equipment like that. A lot of people tend to think, oh, you're making profit behind this. We don't make any profit, because the money goes straight back into equipment and keeping the team's upkeep going day to day, because there's nobody out there to support in what we do. Yeah, I can understand that, because there is a lot of cost involved when you do set something up like that, and you know, it's good that. I mean, do you do sort of private investigations, I take it? Yeah. Well,
basically we kind of do everything. There's not much that we don't do. The only thing we only kind of say we don't do in terms of the paranormal is we don't say to anybody we can get rid of anything. We don't do cleansings or anything like
Right, I
that,
see, okay.
because we just basically say that we don't do anything that we're not experienced in or we're not qualified to do in any way, and everything. If we're just investigators or scientists, as some people like to call us, we're just there to find out or get proof of what's possibly there. So for us, it is probably like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand. It's good to sort of do these private investigations and sort of help people out in a way, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it is quite interesting as well, because when you do the private ones, it kind of brings you away from sort of the commercial side, because there's things more going on. When you get a private person call you up and say they've got something going on in the home, it's a lot more sort of different, because it's not like saying, a good example is, say, the Galleries of Justice. We'll say everybody knows it's haunted, so everybody knows if they want to go on an investigation, they call them up, they book it, they've got a haunted location. But with a private investigation, totally different. You get somebody call you up, say they've got things going on, you have no idea what's going to happen, you have no idea what the building looks like, you have no idea what's going on. It's totally unknown. Sometimes it can be really quiet, and other times it can be full on things happening all night long. And the worst thing about it is you're going in there to try and sort of help them, but also you have to remember is you may make things worse. So you kind of have to go in there with a bit of caution and say, look, we're here to try and prove what's going on, but remember that we may go away and things may get worse. And that's why a lot of the time we always say that there needs to be more sort of, not legislation, but sort of a little bit more control in the paranormal, because especially, I wouldn't say so much with the commercial investigating, but with the private side, simply because you're going into somebody's home and you could be, making things worse, or you're kind of messing a little bit with the emotions possibly. So I do think sometimes it'd be good to have some sort of, not legislation, but there's something there just to kind of help people to see who is kind of the best person.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, that's obviously why we like the whole British paranormal thing, because we think that is kind of the step forward, because it's verifying people, and that's the key thing. You need somebody to verify other people at what they do. It doesn't need to be verified in terms of how good they are. It just needs to be verified in terms of like what we call professionalism, as in how they conduct themselves.
Yeah,
they don't
definitely.
just go in there and 1 minute they go in the house, and then the client comes back and the TV's gone or something like that.
Yeah,
it's it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can fully understand that. It's and this is the reason why I set it up. Not just obviously also to educate people, help people, and offer the advice from my own personal experience.
Yeah.
I have experience from myself. From doing paranormal investigations, so why not bring that to other people? And that's exactly what I'm doing. So it's really, really good. It works very well, and as I said, we'll carry on.
Yeah.
Now, what other? I know you mentioned the Connect for a brief moment back in the chat. How are you getting on with that? Have you had much results, or?
I'll be honest, I thought we'd get loads of hits with it. When we first used it, I thought, I'm going to be seeing stick figures every time I do an investigation. But I'll be honest, we've had hits with it, but we've not had as many as what I'd expect. But I also think that's a good thing, because it proves that the software and the way it's being used isn't just showing everything, because the last thing you want is you set it up, and then you're seeing stick figures all the time, and you're thinking, is it actually something there, or is it the software picking something up incorrectly? So when we tend to do it, we don't tend to get as much, but we also see that as a good side, because it proves that the way it's being set up isn't there just to pick absolutely anything. But we have had occasions where we've looked at footage and we've thought, can't quite explain that. I mean, a good example of probably one of the most unusual ones we've had was when we did, we used it at Paragon. We set up the Kinect camera on some of Jason Love's items in one of the spare rooms. We actually left the items on the road, and then we came back about 30 minutes later and started asking it questions. And when we did Sophia, the haunted doll, on the right-hand side, just before Nick, who's one of our investigators, basically just before he says, pack it up and put it in the box, there's kind of like, on the right hand side, it looks to me like it looks kind of like a shadowy figure thing on the actual Kinect, but it's like it's mapping something, but instead of it being a stick figure, it's kind of an outline, and it's only on the very edge.
Yeah.
But at first we thought maybe it's just, you know, lighting coming through the window causing it to change. But what made it so strange was when Nick basically said, pack it up and put it in the box. As soon as he said that, it just disappeared instantly. It was like it was responding to what he was saying. We've played it back time and time again, and it's so on cue. And we just think that possibly the spirit that was, you know, or is in the doll was kind of staying off camera. It kind of knew what we were doing because it was kind of obvious what we was doing. It could obviously see that we was got cameras all pointed straight at it, and it was thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to stand on the camera. I'm going to stand at the side." But whether it didn't realise that possibly it was on the edge, we don't know. But that's probably the most unusual we've caught. We have caught one at the Derby jail, but we're unsure at the moment whether it is actually paranormal or not. The reason behind that is because there was that many people in the room. We're not sure if the Kinect software started to map somebody's arm out, and then it kind of got a bit confused, because the figure that we think we've caught is kind of like walking on the ceiling. And that's kind of where we think it's a bit strange, because we're not saying they can't go on the ceiling, but it's kind of because it kind of moves up. And because there's that many people in there, it's open to suggestion. It's not kind of very controlled, but we still class it as partial evidence. So
yeah, I can understand. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it is partial evidence, isn't it? You know, I suppose you can, because it's something, as I said, it doesn't happen every time, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And also, as you said, that it has to be something there at least for it to have mapped out something, because it usually picks up on rather than just movement, it picks up on the actual. I mean, how does it work actually? Do you know actually what it detects?
Well, basically, what it does when because we've actually got another piece of software that was given to us from another paranormal team, and it actually kind of maps. I don't know the full kind of the software how it fully works, but from what I'm aware, when we calibrate it with the other software, is when you stand straight on the camera, you can actually calibrate the arms so that it'll actually move exactly to how you're moving. So it's kind of, it's just basically there to pick up